Hello, everyone, and good morning. Wonderful to be here. I'm Orlando Wood, and I'd like to talk to you this morning about selling the spectacle. The show, the artist, and the advertising poster. Toulouse Lautrec's Moulin Rouge, featuring the high-kicking can-can dancer La Goulou, center stage. In the foreground, we have No Bones Valentin, and behind them, we have the scene of this bohemian atmosphere. We have the wonderful bourgeoisie depicted in silhouette behind, looking on with enthusiasm. This poster was provocative, and it was an overnight sensation, catapulting the cabaret and the artist into fame. When we look back at the history of mass reach advertising, it becomes clear that the art and the show are absolutely central to effectiveness. This is a poster by Jules Chéret, who was the father of poster advertising, indeed the father of modern advertising in many ways. He was a lithographer, but he was also an artist. And he looked back to the artists of the Rococo period, Fragonard, Boucher, and so on, to inspire him to create posters like this for Louis Fuller, the dancer, and her serpentine dance. Toulouse Lautrec, his drawings in color, created, really, the avant-garde movement. Alphonse Mucha, who was commissioned by Sarah Bernhardt to advertise her and her show at the Renaissance Theatre, inspired by characters in the Sistine Chapel. Le Chat Noir, the first cabaret, made famous forever by this iconic poster by artist Théophile Steinlen. And Leonetto Capiello, the Italian caricaturist inspired by the Commedie dell'arte to create the most ingenious and varied posters in the early 20th century. These artists, the performers, the dancers, and the singers of the period were the influencers of the time. And the poster was their TikTok. And soon, manufacturers would follow suit, whether it be oil for oil lamps, confetti, cigarette papers, sterilized milk, or chocolate, or many other categories and brands. People were turning to these artists to create work that had color, that had character, and that was full of emotion. And then came the self-styled scientists of advertising in the early 20th century. Albert Lasker in the center there, John E. Kennedy on the left, Claude Hopkins on the right. Through split tests for magazine and print advertising, they worked out what kind of advertising worked best for achieving a direct response. By 1923, when Claude Hopkins wrote his book Scientific Advertising, he began, "The time has come when advertising in some hands has reached the status of a science." He believed not in attracting the general attention of the population, but in speaking only to the already half-interested and giving them a reason why they should buy. He didn't much like the image and preferred the word. And he believed you should not create advertising that puts on a show in this way. He believed that people don't patronize a clown. So much for showmanship. So these two schools of advertising, showmanship, salesmanship, what we might call brand advertising and performance advertising today, have long histories. And they both work in different ways. They're both important, each supports the other, but of the two, showmanship is the more important for profit and growth. And in the last 15 to 20 years, we've started to understand why. In my work, I look to the brilliant neuropsychologist Ian McGilchrist to understand the relationship between attention and creative style. He talks about the two hemispheres of the brain and the way that they pay attention to the world differently. That the right hemisphere brings this sort of broad, open, alert and vigilant kind of attention to bear, always on. And anything of interest, it passes to the left hemisphere for this narrow, focused, goal-orientated attention to be brought to bear on the subject. The thing about the right hemisphere is that it understands the living. It understands people, the way that they move, the way that they talk, the way that they emphasize things with their voice and their hands. It's open to novelty. It understands metaphor. It understands humor, music, and narrative, things that the left hemisphere really can't understand. The left hemisphere likes to take what is presented to it, break it down into smaller parts, fix it, unchanging. And rather than people, it really specializes in things and tools with which to manipulate the world. And the word, and indeed language, are an important part of that. So these two types of attention actually underpin the two schools of advertising. Because showmanship is there to capture the broad beam attention of the right hemisphere.
It's an outrage. It's disgusting. Magnifique.
And salesmanship is there to nudge the sale. It's closer up. People are closer up to the purchase, giving people a reason why they should buy, nudging them into buying. Modern day examples might look a bit like this. Let's have a look at a showmanship ad.
Good morning, Yorkshire Tea. Oh, he was meeting the farmers in Kenya. Let me just check if he's back. Just popping you on hold. Thanks for holding. Putting you through.
Yorkshire Tea, where everything's done proper.
Good morning, Yorkshire Tea.
Yorkshire Tea, where everything's done proper, where celebrities and performers are brought in to show the lengths that this company goes to give you the perfect cup of tea. Salesmanship? Well, it might look like this.
Introducing Budweiser Zero. 0% alcohol, 0 grams of sugar, full Budweiser flavor. A refreshing alcohol-free brew that tastes like the real thing. Budweiser Zero, 0 compromise.
Closer up, assuming a half interest in the product and brand, giving people a reason why they should buy. In my early work with Peter Field, back in 2008, 2009, we looked at the way that different advertising research measures predicted the outcomes, business outcomes, reported on IPA effectiveness cases. And what we found would have delighted Claude Hopkins. We found that key message takeout was indeed this reason why advertising, good at provoking a direct response. What Claude Hopkins would have been less happy about was this finding, The key message takeout, because it's really only speaking to the already half interested in the buying window, is not very good at driving growth over a long period. What I call growth rate, share of market gain relative to your investment, your extra share of voice. So what does drive growth over this period? Well, we found that emotional response was what drove growth rate. This was something that Peter and Les had already explored in the Marketing in the Era of Accountability. But 4 years later, in 2013, they wrote this seminal book. And they re-emphasized the importance of these two schools of advertising, how fame advertising was more likely to drive growth than rational advertising, how showmanship really beats salesmanship. These are generic findings from large numbers of cases. So what about a case study, a single case study? Well, let's look at how Yorkshire Tea has performed since Where Everything's Done Proper was launched in 2017. Its spontaneous awareness has shot up in this period when other brands in the category, theirs has declined. And their market share has doubled in this period. This is the kind of growth that you as marketeers can create. This is the kind of growth that your shareholders will thank you for. And this is what showmanship can do for us. Unfortunately, we've moved from this kind of showmanship in recent years, with character, narrative, with drama and humor, towards the sort of advertising you see on the left here. Very close up, words on the screen, telling us what to do. No sense of narrative, place, metaphor, humor. In recent research with the Effies, System 1 have looked at how advertising performs in emotional terms from their database going back to 2011. And we've seen this decline in emotional response over this time period. And what we've also seen in that data, the Effies effectiveness data, is a decline in brand building effects. So salience, distinctiveness, differentiation, these things that help businesses to grow. So this is something of a problem, and we know now that the show is what creates emotional response in people and captures their attention. So characters, music, movement, novelty, when people see the unexpected for the first time. And we know that these features associated with salesmanship and the left hemisphere of the brain, this directness, this abstraction, words on the screen, this pushes people away. This is inherently uninteresting to people unless they've been warmed up to the brand already by your showmanship or they're in the purchasing window. And it's this sort of advertising top right, therefore, that drives the broadest and longest effects. Yes, salesmanship will achieve direct effects because it's talking to the already half interested, but it's showmanship that builds trust, that gets you talked about, that builds fame, that drives growth, share gain, profit gain, sales gain. This is what we need to be thinking about as marketeers. I'd like to play you just a short clip of Peter Field talking to me about these two schools of advertising and what's happened in recent years.
Let's be quite clear. Showmanship is absolutely about making sales. It's about strengthening the business fundamentals of the brand, not just sales, but also price elasticity and other virtues that it has. Without it, what we have learnt really in the last 10 to 15 years of the performance marketing revolution is that we go nowhere. We go nowhere fast. We just drive a series of spikes. And of course the sales, the performance marketing model, the sales activation model, if you like, just works over a very short time frame. It could be minutes. If we're working online, you serve me a performance marketing message, I will respond within seconds or probably never at all. Other forms of performance marketing may work over days or weeks, but we are talking about the short term. Whereas The brand building model works over months and years, and the kind of advertising that I'm sure you will be showing people in this course, the very best of it, works over decades sometimes. Now, this is the kind of commercial value you get from great showmanship, great brand building, that you will never, ever, ever build into the performance short-term model. Let's be clear about it. Never. You cannot do it.
So with Peter's words echoing in our ears, let's have a look at some new research we've just conducted at System 1 with TikTok. Because on TikTok, there too we found these two schools of advertising working in the very same way. When you look at the features of ads that appear on TikTok, and this is hundreds of ads, what we find is that those that are more geared towards salesmanship are more likely to drive that conversion lift, that direct response mechanism, but they're really not very good at all. In fact, they punish your ability to create memory, brand image, uplift, and brand awareness, salience, in other words. Showmanship, on the other hand, not only drives sales and conversion lift, but it strengthens the business fundamentals too. Image, awareness, memory lift, all of these things that are so important, and many other things too. This also, by the way, we found to be true for creator content, not just advertising on TikTok. These two schools of advertising working in the same way work for creator content too. So, when we look back at Toulouse Lautrec's poster from 1891, something strikes me that really, if you're looking at the sort of thing that might work on TikTok, really we're just talking about a case of the original being updated. Practices change, but principles remain. If you're looking for help in selling the spectacle in your organization, then why not check out these things? My course, APE, with Sir John Hegarty, The Power of Compound Creativity, one of 3 new publications by System 1, looking at this one, how consistency leads to growth. The long and the short form of it, I work with TikTok, and how TikTok, here too, we see these two schools of advertising operating, so how do we make showmanship work there? The creative dividend with the Effies, that too, of course, tells us about how advertising works. And you might enjoy my new film with Peter Field, Measuring the Magic, looking at how measurement can actually support showmanship and how that's changed in the last 20 years or so. So just to conclude, if you want to grow, you've got to put on a show. And your advertising has to be more arresting, more interesting, more entertaining than the content that surrounds you. Only art makes you feel, and only feeling makes you act, said Bill Bernbach. How right he was. And that's the thing about art, or metaphor, or narrative, or music. They open people up to possibility. So go on with the show, and remember that whatever your stage, there's no business like show business.
Everything about it is appealing. Everything the traffic will allow. Nowhere can you get that happy feeling when you are stealing that extra bow. There's no people like show people. They smile when they are low. Yesterday they told you you would not go by. That night you open and there you are. They stay on the dressing room behind the star. Let's go on with the show. Let's go on with the business side show. Business, let's go.
Thank you very much.